President Joe Biden flexing some frail foreign policy muscles this week in response to a coup in Myanmar. The Southeast Asian country was roiled by a military coup this past few weeks as opposition leaders ranging from Aung San Suu Kyi and other members of the National League for Democracy were arrested by the military government as they attempt to kind of overthrow a decades-long period of democratic transition. Now, that opposition party won by a landslide last fall, but unfortunately, it would appear that the military government is not for it. And the response worldwide has been overwhelming. You've probably heard more about the small southeastern nation than you have in your entire life in this past 2 weeks. President Joe Biden spoke out, responding to calls for sanctions on the nation to attempt to break the coup. Now, he spoke yesterday and said that his administration would be taking those actions from different sanctions for military leaders in the nation to withholding military aid and financial aid to the nation as a whole. We're going to roll that clip right now.
I want to say good afternoon, everyone. I want to give you an update on the latest regarding our response to the military coup in Burma. As you know, the assault on Burma's transition to democracy remains an issue of deep bipartisan concern. We've consulted at length, for example, with Senator McConnell, who has had a very keen interest in this, and his team, and we welcome their helpful insights. We've also been in close contact with our allies and partners around the world, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region, driving vigorous diplomatic outreach to help coordinate an international response to what happened. The strong and unified message emerging from the United States has been essential, in our view, to encouraging other countries to join us in pressing for immediate return to democracy. Last week, the United States helped bring together the UN Security Council, which issued a strong statement in support of Burmese democracy. And this week, we will use our renewed engagement on the Human Rights Council to strengthen the world's commitment to human rights in Burma. Today, I again call on the Burmese military to immediately release the democratic political leaders and activists and they're now detained, including Aung San Suu Kyi, and she is, and also Win Myint, the president. The military must relinquish power it seized and demonstrate respect for the will of the people of Burma, as expressed in their November 8th election. So today, I'm announcing a series of actions that we're taking to begin imposing consequences on the leaders of the coup. The U.S. government is taking steps to prevent the generals from improperly having access to the $1 billion in Burmese government funds held in the United States. And today, I've approved a new executive order, excuse me, a new executive order enabling us to immediately sanction the military leaders who directed the coup, their business interests, as well as close family members. We will identify at first round of targets this week, and we're also going to impose strong exports controls. We're freezing U.S. assets that benefit the Burmese government while maintaining our support for health care, civil society groups, and other areas that benefit the people of Burma directly. And finally, as protests grow, violence against those asserting their democratic rights is unacceptable, and we're going to keep calling it out. The people of Burma are making their voices heard, and the world is watching. We'll be ready to impose additional measures, and we'll continue to work with our international partners to urge other nations to join us in these efforts.
Now, the response to this coup in the United States has been overwhelming. The establishment media has probably covered the nation of Myanmar more than you've seen in your entire life in this last 2 weeks. And the United States response has been two-pronged at the governmental level. There's no question in my mind that they've acted in good faith, trying to kind of maintain the United States' role as a peace broker in the international community, pushing these sanctions and pushing for the military coup to be broken and for democracy to be reinstated peacefully in the nation of Myanmar. Unfortunately, the Democratic establishment and the media establishment have, however, taken this as an opportunity to lambast President Donald Trump, or former President Donald Trump, and use it as a weapon against him. Now, following the 2020 presidential election, as I'm sure most of our viewers are aware, President Trump was quick to say that the election had been stolen, that there were massive voting discrepancies and massive fraud networks in the United States election. Now, this also resulted in the January 6th incursion on the Capitol, where many of his supporters had been protesting the electoral result certification in Washington, D.C., and they marched on the Capitol. Unfortunately, a small contingent of them actually broke into the Capitol, disrupted the certification, and that incursion actually did result in deaths and in quite a few injuries. So, of course, the Democratic media establishment and the Democratic congressional establishment has used this to beat Donald Trump over the head and essentially say that it was former Republican leadership that kind of led to this coup in Myanmar, that they had emboldened the military in Myanmar to essentially say that the election last fall, in which, again, Aung San Suu Kyi was overwhelmingly established as a leader in the nation, and the opposition party was overwhelmingly established as a leader in the nation, that essentially Trump had emboldened the military to act against them. Unfortunately for the Biden administration and the Democratic media establishment, there's no question in my mind that they should avoid viewing this topic through that lens like the plague. I mean, at this point, there's no question in my mind and in many of our minds that it was not Donald Trump that emboldened this, but in fact, it may have been Joe Biden and the coming of his administration. Now, under the Trump years and in the Trump era, we saw strong American action toward our enemies. We saw that despite, peaceful interactions with North Korea and attempts to kind of work with foreign enemies to establish peaceful relations and push for democracy and democratization abroad, the president at that time operated with Teddy Roosevelt's big stick diplomacy, the idea that, we need to speak softly, but under the threat that the United States can and will take action to accomplish its ends, and that it will, sanction and, if need be, take military action against opposition to democracy abroad and opposition to American interests abroad. Trump was big on that form of diplomacy. So if anything, it was not Donald Trump that emboldened this action, but again, the coming of the Biden administration and the departure of Trump. I mean, under the Obama-Biden years from 2008 to 2016, we saw a foreign policy punctuated by red lines drawn, crossed, and ignored by the Obama administration, particularly in Syria, where we heard from Obama and Biden that if chemical weapons were used on the people of Syria, and if the terrorism was to continue and the civil war was to be exacerbated over the years, that the United States was going to act with its foreign partners in the international community to sort of fight back against the Syrian regime and against the terrorist actors in that country. There's no doubt that we did in some ways respond militarily, but that red line was crossed and the Obama administration did not act. And I think that there is no question that this coup was orchestrated in part because the world knows that under a Biden presidency, stemming from the Obama years, that the United States is weak and will be weak on its enemies. I think there's more than enough evidence to show this. For another example, we saw at the beginning of the month or the end of last month that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who, if you'll remember, was poisoned last year or was believed to have been poisoned last year by the Russian government on a trip back through the country, that, he was just arrested by the Russian government and he has not yet been released as of this report. And so there is no question, again, that he was acted against under the Trump years. But since Biden has taken office, the Russian government has gone to overt methods to dispose of its enemies and to take them out of the equation. Navalny has been arrested and has not been released again. And despite tough talk from the Biden administration, nothing has been done and likely nothing will be done on the Russian front or the Burmese front in Myanmar. And why is this? It's because Biden is unwilling to back up the bluster, and the world knows it.
Hey guys, did you know we have a podcast called WJ Live?
The Western Journal's mission is to equip readers with the truth, and that's the same mission we have on WJ Live.
You'll hear from writers, editors, and special guests on the most important topics of the day.
You can watch us every day at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific on youtube.com/WJ Live.
While you're there, help us out by subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss any future episodes. See you there.